Where you are when you're watching this. I'm Chef AJ and welcome to Chef AJ Live. If you're seeing me for the first time, you know that I started this broadcast when sheltering in place began just to create a sense of connection and community, but it became a real thing that people actually look forward to and watched. And I received so many kind emails that people really like this. So we have lots of great guests coming up in the next weeks and months, and today is no exception. We are broadcasting him live from the TrueNorth Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, one of my favorite places in the world. And I know whenever we have a medical doctor on, you guys love asking questions, and we'll get to as many as we can, but some people sent them in advance. And remember, you do get priority if you send them in. And how do you do that? You just get on my mailing list. And when we send out the guests the day before, you just write back to us. And if you don't get your question answered, you're in luck, because this particular medical doctor at the TrueNorth Health Center actually does private consultations. So you can book one for phone or Skype and then get all your questions answered. Please welcome Dr. Antonio Soler. It's so nice to get to talk to you.
Thank you. Hopefully this will serve your audience and anyone who tunes in. Just trying to do our best here to be of help.
Right. So how did you go from Puerto Rico to Santa Rosa and become a plant-based doctor, eating a plant-based diet and teaching people to eat a plant-based diet?
Oh, thank you. Well, it could be a long story, but I always try to keep it as short as possible. I mean, in my case, it certainly has been a long journey, so to speak. Many folks that make this transition, they pretty much stumble and got into a big aha and then make the change from 1 week to the other or so. In my case, I guess there was a series of events that led me ultimately to make the complete change, which I think it has also solidified where I'm at now. But in any case, to make the long story short, I had a significant left knee injury when I was about 23 years old or so. I was playing basketball on my own. That turned into a chronic ACL injury, and my favorite thing was to run, and was always inflamed. Not always, but I did have some slight amount of pain, and then I did an MRI when I was a medical student and was almost on my last year. Well, I was on my last year, and then I had to undergo a left knee a surgery to repair. It got significantly inflamed after that, and through that process, the irony was that all these medications and all these surgical processes where I had studied, they were actually not working too well. I mean, I was in pain, and so I just said to myself, "There's got to be a better way through this." And I recall that when I was a teenager and I read the Men's Health magazines, for example, I would read articles where it would say that, oh, if you eat pineapple, you get less inflammation and that sort of thing. And then I started to research on my own about anti-inflammatory diets. Fast forward many years later, I found forks over knives, which, as many of your audience might know, it's such a great resource of evidence-based medicine, where all of these doctors all these years I didn't even know about were making, or were reversing chronic illnesses that I was thought was impossible to reverse, like heart disease and even cancer. And that certainly caught up my attention. Started to do more of the changes or optimize the nutritional changes I had already done. I started to, first of all, feel so much better that I had no option but to share it with my family and my friends, and especially my patients, because I found that when something works, you have a duty to tell it to the world, especially if it can do so many good things. You shouldn't keep it to yourself. So, yeah, I think that, to make the long story short, I think that was it. Yeah.
Do you wish you had learned some of this in medical school?
Oh, you bet. I mean, and nowadays, folks are so lucky to have so much resources that we didn't have back in the day. I mean, I'm not that old either, but yeah, all these wonderful resources, documentaries and such, it would have definitely made a change. But hey, it's never too late, and what a better time to live in that all this information can really reach hundreds, millions of people. And we certainly have seen how the awareness is growing, thankfully, for those who really want to have the option of having better health. Yes, absolutely.
So pain's a great motivator, I'm sure you know, for your patients as well. So that knee injury could have been a really a good thing in a way because it got you to start taking a look at some things.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, as you said, pain is a, we usually change from either inspiration or desperation, but certainly desperation, the way we're built, it's obviously a thing that it moves you or it moves you. And it certainly did with me. But yeah, it's all about taking everything is a gift. You have to look at it that way. And actually, the more the higher you are, the higher you fall, but also the lower you are, the more upside to you in terms of what it can do. And it's certainly been a huge gift for me.
Do you still play basketball?
Sure, I'm every here and there. I mean, I'm certainly much more careful. I don't dunk anymore. So I just, yeah, of course, I'm very careful. But what I can say though is that the first 5 years after the surgery, I did have a slight chronic pain, but very slight. I would say I graded maybe 1, 2 out of 10. But ever since I changed to a plant-based diet, even though more time has has passed from when I first had the surgery, certainly no pain at all. And so I certainly can attribute that mainly to a plant-based diet, and also fasting, intermittent fasting over time also certainly has helped significantly.
That's great. Do you ever play with Dr. Goldhammer? Because I know that his least favorite thing about the pandemic was he hasn't been able to play basketball.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't had yeah, we haven't had the time to do that, but certainly when I do, I'll certainly beat him.
That would be great. That would be great. Maybe you can play with Dr. Lyle too.
Yes,
So, you know, a lot
yes.
of people want to change a Dr. Soler, but it's so hard to change. What do you think helped you? What motivated you to change? But like, were there any particular habits or things you did that made this change doable and sustainable for you that maybe you could tell us? And maybe those that are having difficulty change could implement those as well.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, so when I decided to become a doctor or study medicine, um, medicine has a lot of great things, and it's a profession that you're not only respected, not that I went in it for it, but you're also able to make a good living, generally speaking. I come from a business family, so money, even though it's very important and we love money, that was not the main motivator for me. So I really took it as a vocation. And so, I always had this philosophy that you don't accept disease. You actually fight, you fight it. You try to overcome it as much as you can, of course. As I mentioned, there was not any big only one moment that changed it all. But I started to see a lot of the patients, young patients, that was one thing is what you learn in the books, but there's another different aspect of what you see in real life in the hospital. And so I started to see a lot of young patients with no family history, certainly overweight, obese, being on a number of medications, 5, 6 medications, sometimes in their 20s, 30s, and it's like you start connecting the dots, and something doesn't add up here. And so I always thought that it's very important to like not doctor, well, Steve Jobs used to say, stay hungry, stay foolish, meaning stay humble. And you always want to be open on things that hit you kind of from left field. And I think that curiosity especially made me open to things that were not necessarily mainstream, but were certainly working. And I always remember also Socrates, I think, as he said, is all I know is I know nothing. So I think as scientists, sometimes we get a little, what's the word, too arrogant, because we've learned, we've read 100 books, and we think, well, that's all there is to it. But there is so much to learn, and I think the fact that I stayed curious and humble, and I think it is still that way, certainly helped not only change and help me, but even more important, because who do I care about me? I mean, I'm only one human being, and I only care about being able, the privilege to be able to change the lives of hundreds, probably thousands of patients by now.
That's great. Do you find that they have something consistent in common when they're ready to change? The certain habits that they undertake?
Sure. I mean, you already mentioned that there is well, either inspiration or desperation. What I've certainly noticed over the years is that you have to decide. I mean, unless you decide, if it's a should, um, Tony Robbins used to say that people should all over themselves. Oh, I should do this, I should do that. But when it's a must, you really change, and it's either either a body image thing or because you have a health condition. And when you get yourself to that level where you need to either change or else, that certainly tends to be a thing that helps. I know I'm maybe being oversimplistic in what I'm saying, but it's the truth. I mean, I recall even when I was 15 years old, um, doctor was going through hard emotional times that we all go through, and the doctor prescribed me a antidepressant medication. I guess it helped, but I just decided back then that I was gonna fight it, and I was gonna not have to do medications. And I can relate even the specific moment where I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna be happy, and I'm just gonna be. I know I'm being oversimplistic again, and some folks do need therapy and all that. Not downplaying it, and some folks do need some medications for a certain period of time. Well, point being is that when you decide, you can't. Yeah, you can't underestimate the power of decision. And whenever I've seen a patient that they're not doing as well, and I'll ask them, listen, just put a name here. Listen, John, have you really decided that you want to make a change? And if they're not doing well, they'll usually pause and think, and well, doctor, you're right. I'm actually doing this because I don't know. I guess I have to do it, but I haven't found a huge motivating factor to actually make the change, and vice versa. Whenever I've seen somebody doing really great, when I ask them, they've usually tell me, well, doctor, this experience happened, or I sat down that afternoon, I started writing, and I said, well, this is it. I'm going to change. And that can be really, really powerful moment in anyone's life.
Yeah. Do you think there's certain habits that just keep people from reaching their goals?
Sure, sure. So mainly, I think what I've noticed is that many patients are whether you're a patient or not, what I've observed is that we sometimes tend to be our own worst advocates in a way. Unfortunately, I think we're always, like the saying goes, the grass is always greener on the other side. And so I think it's so important for us to keep a gratitude journal, whether it's in your mind or even written down, because again, I think you should be your best coach. And unfortunately, the pattern, what I've noticed, and even folks that you will think are so healthy in their mind and in their bodies, it shouldn't surprise us when we see the news, so many celebrities that seem to have it all, yet they're not. They get into all these crazy dramas, and it just points out that we as a society can certainly do better. And I can say that being content, and not necessarily fully conform, because it's always important to always do better, but it keeps you, because if you're not in a gratitude state, if you're not acknowledging what you are, you're always coming from a place of lack. And from a place of lack and from a lack of connection can come a lot of addictive behavior, whether that's food or otherwise. So I think that is very important for everyone to keep in mind, to be grateful. Again, I'm seems like I'm being oversimplistic now, but we have so many tactics, so many books, so many blogs out there. I think the specifics anyone here can just reach with a Google search. But what the value of coming to a place like TrueNorth, or to reaching doctors with experience like I and Alan and other doctors have, is that we really can pinpoint one, two, or three things, whether that's behaviors or or mindset, that can totally change the game. And I really respect and appreciate also what you do, because you also come from that unique perspective that is not necessarily about the specific information, but but emotionally, what's our relationship to food and to health that really motivates and makes a difference. Granted that environment and specific behaviors and how we set up our connections to other folks and all of that matters significantly. In fact, this is why we're here. So
So
yeah,
I introduced you as a doctor, but I didn't say what kind. And so Gina and Kathy said, "What is your specialty?"
sure. Well, I'm a you could say a regularly trained allopathic MD, medical doctor. I studied in Puerto Rico, and thankfully, because of our relationship with the U.S., was an easy transition here to California. And pretty much general practice. I see patients, primary care, pretty much. But for the last 5-6 years, I've been fully immersed in learning and doing certifications on plant-based nutrition. And for the last 3 years, I've been here on TrueNorth Health Center, one, if not the most, one of the most important integrative and plant-based center medicine and fasting centers for healing the whole world. It seems like I'm biased because I'm here, but we've seen so many patients with so many different medical issues that they've tried even integrative medicine. And we have a saying that there's nothing like doing nothing, meaning when you fast and you let your own body come in and do all the cleansing and all the things that it knows needs to do, things get much better, or the disease starts reversing. And so yeah, it's impressive what I have the fortune, and I'm humbled by that, by day in and day out.
I love that saying. I also have one, which is how beautiful it is to do nothing and then rest afterwards.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a sign like that. So Jessie, who's watching live, said that she read on your bio on the True North website that you meditate. Do you follow any particular meditation practice?
Sure. Oh, I'm glad that they asked that, because I even forgot to mention that. I think that was one of the main things that also created the environment favorable for me to be not open, but understand all that we do better. Yeah, I certainly meditate. I have been for the last wow, almost 15 years now. Like all of us, like kind of like exercise. Sometimes we go through cycles where we're doing it more times than others. Um, I do several types, just like exercise. Sometimes you run, sometimes you lift weights, and just meditation. It's you can do a similar analogy to that. I mainly will say that it's what's called vipassana meditation, where you're focusing mainly on the breath. And I think we live in an environment that's so noisy nowadays, especially with social media and the internet, that we need to be more proactive in terms of cleaning our mind, cleaning our brain. If we think about it, if we go by true science, physics, we are actually 99.99% space. So sometimes going back to again, I don't want to sound too oversimplistic, but going back to nothing, going back to the removal. In the removal is the biggest challenge. Adding things is easier. I think Einstein said that. Adding things is easier. It takes a genius, or it takes someone very wise to actually know that in the removal of things is where you find true wisdom and true the truth, pretty much.
That's funny because what you mentioned about adding versus subtracting, there's a whole chapter in the book, The Pleasure Trap, written by Dr. Goldhammer with Dr. Lyle, called, I believe it's called Looking for Health in All the Wrong Places. And people are always looking for the nutrient or the medication or something to do, when in fact it's usually that taking something away is what's better. That it's people are so worried about deficiency when the true problem is excesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and of course, there's a credit to finding the right thing to add. But again, our brain tricks us, and we are so biased towards adding and adding and adding and adding more. And where the mental hack or the physical hack is actually finding ways to simplify, to go back to the basics, so to speak.
That's what's sort of been nice about the sheltering in place is that we've at least, not everybody, of course, I know there's people on the front lines, but for many people, it's given them some time to see what's important and what they really want to do in their lives.
Absolutely, and reflect. And granted that a lot of folks are living through very difficult, hard times, but for some of us would have thought that, oh my God, I can't be a month at home, I will die. I mean, it would be, but actually a lot of positive things are also coming out of this. Hopefully, I know there's again a lot of hardship and a lot of folks are not having a good time at all, but it's all about yeah, taking this time and making the better of it. And I think we generally yeah, generally resting the body, the mind is always a good thing whenever possible in a healthy way.
Laurel, who's watching live, said, "Would you suggest anyone starting out go to some kind of a plant-based program?"
Sure. I mean, it's always important to do this as much as possible, especially for folks that might have any physical conditions, especially if they're taking medications. Because plant-based diets can work so well that even within a week or less than a week, those medications might become redundant and might cause hypoglycemic, meaning low blood sugar or low blood pressure episodes. Now, if we're talking about the average folk, well, and this is where my advice becomes a little tricky because somebody around there might say, well, I'm healthy, but yet they're not. They don't know it. They're just not on medications because they haven't seen a doctor in a while. And so that's why it's very important to have some guidance by a doctor that knows what this is, this how this can work, so that they can be guided. Always important to look for sources that are based on evidence, like Dr. Greger's Nutrition Facts website and also his books. And so it's also important that these sources, you're not learning just only from a blog, brought from research and sources like you bring here.
Great. So we have a question about fasting. Is
Sure.
it better to do one 24-day water fast annually or 5-day water fast each month? And this is from a healthy person with no conditions on no medication.
So you said it's 24 days or 24
Yeah,
hours?
so I guess they were saying that would it be better for them to do a one time a year, a 24-day water fast,
Oh, I see.
or do 5-day water fasts each month?
Oh, I see. I see. Oh, great question. So, well, first of all, of course, want to clarify that anyone who's thinking about doing this needs to be on a supervised medical setting, whether they have medical issues or not. Even though water fasting is generally fairly benign and there are a few complications, the complications could literally involve death, unfortunately, if you're not doing it in a supervised manner. So they have to go to there are several centers throughout the U.S. and unfortunately not that many. Ours is one of them. They don't need to come here necessarily, but so first of all, I would not recommend anyone to do a unsupervised water fast. That being said, it will depend, provided that anyone is already on a supervised medical setting or has the intention to do that on a supervised medical setting the way it should be. It will depend. I mean, for some folks, as actually a combination of both might actually be the best plan, depending on where they are in their health. But they mentioned, I think, a healthy person, correct?
The person is saying they are healthy with no medical conditions.
Yeah, I mean, when you say healthy again, what healthy would mean? Me as a doctor, again, I've seen tons of patients who think they're healthy, but there's certainly some underlying issues. But let's assume that they are really healthy, that they check with their doctor. I mean, I think a 24-hour one, a 24-day one, sorry, provided that someone is has a normal BMI, would be kind of actually maybe too long of a one versus what they would need. I'm estimating that maybe for someone who's really healthy on a normal BMI, 10 days at most 2 weeks would be about most we would recommend. And I'm not sure that a full 5 days a month would also be necessarily fully in their benefit. Certainly maybe doing intermittent fasting or intermittent feeding, you know, feeding windows that are 16 hours or so. I'm sorry, 8 hours, 10 hours of eating and limiting, because nowadays we're just eating all the time. I think there would be more of a case, and it's more sustainable, I guess, for the majority of folks. But again, emphasizing that it's essential that folks really look for medical guidance to do this.
Thank you. Kathy wants, I'm sure the answer is going to be it depends, but Kathy says, how many days of fasting does it take to see initial response to healing?
Oh, good question. We have good data that it takes as little as 24 hours. I mean, in 24 hours already, we start to see significant biological marker changes like a human growth hormone secretion. We start to see cholesterol being mobilized out of arteries, and you start to see excess sodium being, and what we call natriuresis, has been secreted from the body. Yeah, a lot of changes start occurring as soon as the body starts detecting, or will start not to be occupied by digestion and start to catabolize many of metabolic products. So I think as soon as 24 hours, you can already see benefits. And for most healthy folks that are on no medications, actually going for 24 hours in between meals, we might argue that could be a good protocol for some folks, at least one or 2 days out of the week, certainly not more than that.
Well, I was listening to a podcast with you the last few days to prepare for this interview, and you said, at least at the time of the podcast, you personally have water fasted 4 times.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I like to drink my own medicine, so to speak. I don't like to recommend things that I wouldn't do myself generally. And yeah, the first time I fasted was about 3 years ago, and oh boy, thankfully, besides the left knee, which thankfully, as you see by now, is a fairly benign issue with me. But oh boy, I mean, I would never imagine. I mean, I was one of to think that not eating was so unhealthy. You should be eating your 3 meals every day, and I felt so good. And not only that, but I was able to see how my markers were already doing good, but improve even much more. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I actually at least once a year or so fast for at least 5 to 7 days, it's a great practice. And yeah, I think we all should be practicing some form of it. And this is why historically most religions and most societies have some version of fasting, because we've recognized that not only for the body but for the mind.
Nice. Lamont asks, I would like to know what water fasting has helped that you have seen at TrueNorth, like permanent bloating, distended stomach after surgery, for example, if you are already vegan.
Yeah, in that, well, answering to that particular aspect, certainly we have seen improvements. Again, we would need to see if the person already plant-based but still having those sort of digestive issues. There are certain protocols that just by eating or making some modifications to what they're eating or what they're not eating could go a long way. I really like a new book that's out there. I think you had him on your show not that long ago. This book, Fiber Fuel. There's a lot of good, amazing information there that can help if this person who asked haven't read that book. But of course, looking for someone who also guides him or her through the process will be important. Well, that being said, yeah, absolutely, we've seen that with fasting. We've seen all sorts of issues that even on a plant-based diet, this kind of gives you a last push or a significant push and help improve many of these conditions. Like we have research cases on certain cancers like lymphomas. Again, this is not to say that this is an all cure all be all, of course, but can certainly impact hypertension. There are several other conditions where we have certainly not seen anything do or achieve the things that a fast. I really think it for now remains the best quote unquote kept secret in healthcare and even mental health care, I would say. There are certain parts of the brain, the hypothalamus, where the emotional and addictive pathways are located in the same area. And when you fast, We've seen folks that have been on several years on psychiatric medications that finally, or even addictions like smoking, that have finally been able to stop that. Again, therapy is needed for most folks still, and you have to do it in a supervised setting or manner. But we have seen things that otherwise I just frankly hadn't seen, even in integrative medicine centers where they might put you in fancy IVs, and not to take any credit from that, because that can work. But we certainly see, I would say, even on a weekly basis, I don't cease to be surprised by the quote unquote surprise, because I know it's happening. But yeah, folks that have been struggling with issues for years, where we've seen significant improvements.
I thought you weren't. I thought being on psychiatric medicine was a contraindication for water fasting.
Well, of course, we do it. They certainly cannot fast with a psychiatric medication, so we just start to wean enough. So by the time that they're fasting, the quote unquote detox, or the withdrawal phase of that is accelerated, and instead of they're not doing well for a month or a couple of weeks, it only takes sometimes days. I mean, especially for folks who smoke, for example, we don't allow for, using that as an example, we don't allow folks to smoke while fasting. But then when they stop smoking, it only takes 2 to 3 days, and then they're feeling fantastic, generally speaking. So yeah, that's more what I meant.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned addictive pathways. I don't know if you can see the shirt, but I purposely wore this shirt for you. Do you know what that is?
Let me see if I
And
can.
I also have the earrings. I wore this just for you. Here, I'll do it.
Oh, dopamine.
All right, you are a smart doc. You're right, because that's everything I learned about dopamine, I learned at TrueNorth. And not everybody knows that that's the chemical symbol. So you are one smart doc. Very good.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I guess again, I'm just so curious, and we really love what we do. And thank you.
It's so nice to see a doctor that's this inspired and inspiring. Speedy Vegan says, why do some people experience significant hair loss after fasting?
Oh, great question. So any type of weight loss, remember, the body is prioritizing its resources, and when you're losing weight, you're probably recycling nutrients, and the last thing the body needs is to keep growing hair. That's probably part of the short answer to it. I mean, there's a lot of biochemical pathways that might explain that, and it's certainly a worry for some folks. But generally speaking, provided that there are no nutritional deficiencies, and then one gets back on a really rich and healthy and complete whole food plant-based diet, that should never be a chronic side effect or issue with folks once they get back on what they should be eating.
Sheila says, how long is it recommended for the first fast for a healthy adult?
Okay, well, again, it just will vary so much, because even a healthy adult might be on the higher end of their BMI, meaning they might be just barely 24 point something, 25, and another healthy folk might be on the lower end of their BMI, maybe a BMI of 20, 19. And so it will depend on the goals. But I would say, if you are to do a healthy fast in a supervised setting, I would estimate that at least you should do, if you're going to go for the trouble of it, you shouldn't do less than I guess 7 days. It's a good number, even. But there are certain products like FGF21 that don't start being secreted until you reach around day 10. And also, you don't go into deep ketosis until you're around day 5 or so. And also, the first 2 to 3 days of a fast tend to be a little messy, meaning you're not feeling your best. So sometimes we have had some patients that they just don't have the time, and they've just come here for a very short period of time, and they just fast for 3 days. And I always tell them, my only fear is that you're getting a bad image of what a fast is, because the first 2 to 3 days tends to be a little rough on you, but then you tend to feel so well on the rest of the way. And so, yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I would say optimally 7 to 10 days is a good number for someone who's really healthy on a normal BMI, and provided they're in a supervised setting and they've done, their homework and there are no medications. Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. Florence says, any suggestions to making giving up coffee less painful?
Well, several things. Making sure that you're hydrating well. I mean, this could be a long answer, but You want to make sure that you're very well hydrated. You want to make sure that there are not any other concomitant, meaning not any other addictive behaviors alongside with it, like alcohol, for example. And it can be a very, you know, underdiagnosed problems in the sense that some folks might be having 2 glasses of wine, and then you're having in the morning when you're stopping coffee next morning, you're not going to be feeling as well. But if on top of that you also had 2 glasses of wine previous night, um, that can be a problem. Also, making sure you're exercising, provided that's something you can be doing in regards of your health, because exercises does so many good things, and keeping that dopamine. So it's always a substitution principle in a way. Keeping your brain focused on something that's also making you secrete that dopamine, whether that's exercise. We already mentioned meditation, making sure you're optimizing your environment for getting a good night's sleep. That's also very important. Also, I mean, so they said coffee or caffeine, I don't recall.
Coffee. They said coffee.
Coffee, yeah. So maybe starting transitioning also to a lesser version, to either decaf or green tea, which is certainly a healthier version of what coffee is, and it probably decrease significantly the withdrawal symptoms, but yet at the same time adding some very healthy components like polyphenolic compounds. Green tea actually helps artery function, vasodilation, versus coffee actually does not. Actually, coffee can raise cholesterol levels and also can produce acute arterial dysfunction, which is that the artery wall can vasocompress for up to 2 to 3 hours, and meaning that your tissues will not get optimal circulation, oxygenation, nutrient delivery. And this is why one of the mainstays of reversing heart disease is we do have, fortunately for good or bad, to stay away from more specifically coffee than maybe green tea or other stuff, based on an extensive research we have by now.
Nice, thank you. There's so much, you hear other doctors say, oh, we need 5 cups a day to prevent strokes. And it gets so confusing. But, I always go by, I go by the Goldhammer standard. If Dr. Goldhammer says it's not good, then I'm going to go with him, because he's been doing this pretty much longer than anybody,
Yeah, well, and also when you go to the nature, if you think coffee does not give you energy, it just blocks. It's an adenosine receptor blocker. So it blocks the receptor in the brain, or the neurotransmitters in the brain that actually give you feedback that you should actually be sleeping more. I mean, that 5 cup of coffee, blows away my mind, especially when that advice, frankly. Maybe once in the morning you could argue, but the more I've researched, I'm very impressed. We haven't touched this subject about how important sleep is. And I don't think that a human being can get optimal sleep on 5 cups of coffee. It doesn't matter how good their body metabolizes it. And so sleep it sets up for so many metabolic parameters that sleep controls for. And I frankly think it should actually be even before almost that we're thinking about nutritional change. If your sleep is not there, your cortisol will be higher. You will be just metabolically, we see insulin resistance, we see higher blood pressure just by changing or reducing your amount of sleep. And so it's so important, especially nowadays with all this stress with the corona and all of that, folks just staying so late, just watching the news. And it's very, very important that folks prioritize their sleep. And if anyone's having sleep issues and they're still drinking coffee, I think that's a big no-no.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Michelle says, is it possible to clear out pelvic plebelifts by eating whole food, plant-based, no sofas, and daily intermittent fasting?
Pelvis, I didn't hear the second word.
I don't know this word. She spells it PHLEBOLITH. Plebelifts. I'm not a doctor, so.
Oh, so that pelvic phlebolith. So sounds like that might be they're talking about kidney stones in their urinary system. This is what I'm gathering. So yeah, unfortunately, once phlebolyths are formed, it's it certainly can give you a good chance, certainly not for your body to not form them anymore. But in some cases, unfortunately, well, if you give it enough time and it's been weeks or months and you're hydrating well and you're doing everything you can, and that is still bothering you. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes a surgical approach in some of the cases might just be warranted, but if anything will give you a good chance to not formate again and to improve it, yeah, it will be a plant-based diet with no sofas.
Nice. There's a question on when you break a water fast, what are the best juices to have? Best type of juices?
Sure. So again, making sure that you're being on a supervised setting. And so juices, we certainly do organic, fresh press. They're about 50% vegetable, 50% fruits. 'Cause the thing is, you do have to. The question is why do juices and not smoothies? And then some folks have a very sensitive digestive system, and going from your digestive system, which is very metabolically and physically active, to waken it with a high fiber, which is kind of stretching it further its comfort level. So yeah, it's important that some fruit juice is added as well, because you need to start to bring some glucose, some energy to start waking up your gastric system. And so we use about 50% fruit, 50% vegetable juice, organic, fresh pressed, again, provided that they're in a supervised setting.
Terrific. Dina says, how does a person get the nutrients if they are on a month-long fast? For example, if they were on the standard American diet, their body was probably not full of nutrients to begin with.
Well, good question, and that's why precisely we encourage. Dr. Gulhammer does a great job here of screening and giving initial, fair recommendations. As this is why we emphasize that folks, as much as possible, either become whole food plant-based before starting it. The more time they do it before fasting, the better. And so that is very important. But other than that, that's precisely why we do blood work before starting, to identify any potential deficiencies. And while they're doing the fast as well, we also repeat certain blood work to make sure that there are no essential nutritional deficiencies. Of course, we can, and it's not practical to do the 1,000 biochemical profile, but the most essential ones. And again, this is the importance of the way we do it here. But generally speaking, the body is very great at recycling its own nutrients, and it is very rare. But when it happens, it happens. And so that's why we do it the way we do it. But generally speaking, it's amazing that the body can go generally up to 40 days on folks if they have the reserves and not experience actually any significant nutritional deficiencies, provided that they were eating a fairly unprocessed diet before they started. But certainly, and especially the week before they started fast, is critical for them to get a very comprehensive or very whole food plant-based diet.
And you really don't recommend people water fast at home, even if they have a doctor that follows them. Even if it's not a doctor that's trained in supervised therapeutic water only fasting, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's so much. I sometimes have seen, as you know, nowadays with the internet and social media, a lot of folks giving advice that, oh my God, I mean, the experience matters so much. I mean, you can read all you want, because I had read Dr. Furman's fasting book before I came here to TrueNorth. Oh my God, it's an ocean of information that you need to know, because again, the risk is that when something can go wrong, something can go really wrong, and you don't want to end up in the hospital, especially during these times. So any doctor, even though you might think you know 90% of what you need to know, if you don't have the experience and all the information that we know you need to know, it can get dangerous. Although that's rare, but it can get dangerous still.
Great. So a lot of people are posting various conditions, and so I'll just read all the ones that I'm seeing, and you can maybe comment if fasting
Sure.
has helped any of them. A lot of them are acronyms like SIBO, COPD, early Alzheimer's.
Okay. So SIBO, first of all, I'll have to note that unfortunately, the way it's been diagnosed is not the most accurate one. And for some folks that think they might have SIBO, is actually other other issues that might be happening there. But provided that they have fasting, any digestive issues, there's probably a reconditioning or a reset of their microbiome, and that probably can be of help with anyone who has any digestive issues in general. Um, Second one was COPD. So unfortunately, once one person, it depends the source of the COPD. Is this a person a smoker, or does this person have asthma? And so depending on what's actually eventually causing this COPD, it could be a huge yes or a huge, unfortunately, not much. But also by improving other parameters, sometimes we're not able to fully reverse that condition. But by improving the rest of the health of the body, your condition stabilizes, and so it doesn't fully progress where otherwise it would have. Not only by fasting, but by following a plant-based diet. That can go a long way. I mean, because otherwise, many of these conditions are quickly and severely progressing when you're doing a traditional approach. So you stop progression on the one hand. There might be even a slight regression, which can go a long way. And so it's very important when we see patients here to make them understand that, because again, our brain is always looking for what we don't have. And so we tend to be a little polarized nowadays. Oh, it's all or nothing. It either cures it or it's not. I'm not doing it. But people should give them a chance, because reversing it, like reversal and stabilization of a condition, I mean, can lead to uh, quality of life where you couldn't even imagine what it could have been otherwise. Alzheimer's, we're understanding more and more that Alzheimer's has, or any type of dementia, even Parkinson's, it's more of a vascular disease than it is a genetic or otherwise. If there's something that can improve artery health, and in fact, there's only thing that can prevent and reverse cardiovascular disease and health, is a plant-based diet. And fasting can be a significant addition, acceleration, optimal improvement of cardiovascular health. So unfortunately, if someone does have advanced Alzheimer's, brain tissue rarely, but some folks might find themselves or a family member with very early stages, and again, it can probably prevent or arrest that disease process, so that this person probably can have a very normal life the rest of their 10, 20, 30 years. And there can be a slight improvement as well.
And I figure, what do people have to lose, especially since Dr. Goldhammer does free consults to screen people to see if TrueNorth is right for them. It is the most affordable of all the fasting centers in the world. It's like $149 a day. And, I was interviewing a doctor yesterday, and she was saying how, patients just want a cure. And they say that's not possible with every condition. But if you have some improvement, that's better than no improvement.
Absolutely, and the side effects are pretty much all positive. I mean, you tend to lose some weight for most folks. That helps, but you go from your mood, your mental state, you go from blood pressure, cardiovascular health. There are so many. I mean, if there will be a pill, we'll be billionaires by now in terms of what a fast does. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're trying to do that. Believe me, I've heard about that. They're trying to put all the benefits of fasting and all the benefits of a plant-based diet into a pill. That's what people want, a pill for every ill. No effort, no responsibility. You can still do it. You can still get the results. It just takes a little bit of effort. So Dina says, I'm on a whole food plant-based diet, but I need to control my blood pressure. Oh, but still need to control my blood pressure. My cardiologist recommended I remove nuts, seeds, and overt fats. Would that be something that you think would be worth trying?
So I'm assuming this person is already on a whole food plant-based diet?
That's what she says, yes.
Yeah, and so yes, I think nuts and seeds, while there are a lot of benefits to many of them, and this is precisely the importance of seeing a plant-based or a doctor who has experience in plant-based medicine, plant-based nutrition, because yes, it can be some folks do need an adjustment depending on what type of condition you have, and even someone with high blood pressure or cardiovascular disease, certainly limiting nut and seed consumption I'm not saying fully eliminating, but certainly decreasing it significantly, because artery function, it's and also fat when you eat, it tends to, depending on how you're eating it, because if you're eating it alongside carbohydrates, it can accumulate more in your body. And yeah, generally speaking, folks with cardiovascular disease should do and do better with a limited amount consumption of all types of fats, including, unfortunately, nuts and seeds.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So with the current pandemic, are there certain habits that you recommend people focus on now? Because, Dr. Greger did a 4-hour webinar yesterday, and he said that as bad as this is, there's going to be a worse one coming someday. So what can we do now to protect ourselves?
Sure. I think first of all is protecting the mind. If there's something I've seen here in TrueNorth, it's we have been so amazed to see here, because when a patient is here, they can quote unquote they can escape. So you're able to see the effects of mind-body medicine. And these are uncertain times for all of us, regardless where you are, whether you have means or not. These are certainly uncertain times. And I think it really does start with protecting the mind. And for many of us, even exercise, which helps protect the mind and our health state. The gyms are closed, and so I think it really starts with there. I think it starts with fair enough that we need to watch the news, so you need to know what's happening, but maybe limiting. This is something I do myself. I have actually an app called Freedom that you set so that you can even access the internet for certain periods of time that you set up, and you can customize it for 30 minutes or an hour or 12 hours. So I'm not saying be ignorant. In fact, I'm not even saying don't watch the news or don't be up to date, but protecting the mind is very important. So maybe limiting to maybe not more than 10 or 30 minutes a day can go a long way. Of course, precisely now is the time to eat more and more fruits, vegetables, more, eat more of a plant-based diet, because many of the studies do show, even though I cannot say with the data that we have now, nobody can, that a plant-based diet will fully protect you. But what we have seen is that more than 90% of folks that have, besides age, having a chronic illness and one thing we know is that a plant-based diet probably can prevent and reverse most of them. So now it's an even more important time to switch to a plant-based diet. So folks that weren't doing as perfect, especially eliminating the SOFAs or the SOS, whatever way you want to call it. And now is a good time to start building and perfecting your habits, because we all can do a little better, right? And so I think Mother Earth is trying to send us a message here, and I think we should really understand that hopefully we could all be fully vegan. But in the meantime, having this cage animal factory or operations even under our own roof here, even in the U.S., is certainly a main cause of potential future pandemics. And we were quote unquote lucky that this wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. But I think it's a great opportunity to get the message across that yeah, I mean, nature is trying to send us a message, and we should use this opportunity to bring more conscience that not only we're killing ourselves with what we're eating, but we're killing our way of life, because the next one could be very scary. And there's also a concept I learned not long ago studying about this, epidemics and pandemics, because this is not something we used to study, doctors, on a day-to-day basis. And it's the concept of hyperendemics, which means that these diseases not only happen as a pandemic, but then they get established, unfortunately. And all the, as much as you want to downplay it, and unless hopefully this is gone in a couple of months, there's a possibility that we have yet another thing to do. Oh, this is another flu. Well, we don't need another flu. I mean, because then you increase the burden of disease. And we used to not have HIV, now we have it because folks were eating monkeys in the jungle. And now we have HIV as a hyperendemic, and it's present on the whole world. Like, oh, it's another flu. Maybe it is, maybe not. I think it's not. My personal, I don't want to get into the debate, but we just don't need another flu. And let's say in 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we get another quote unquote Corona-like, we just don't need another one. And I think it's a great opportunity, regardless where you stand in this debate that I don't think we should even have. It's a great opportunity to bring more awareness, especially for our family members and ourselves.
Nice. Do you have a dog there?
Oh yeah, sorry, Miley.
No, it's okay. I just I love dogs. I'd love for you to show it. It's just that now that I'm wearing headset, I didn't know if it was your dog or my dog. So
yeah, she's sometimes shaking, and probably you're hearing the.
Yeah, no, but isn't that good? I'd be a good detective. You're welcome to show your dog, because there's a comment that you have a lovely wife, so we'd love to meet your dog. I just didn't know if I was going crazy, because I could have sworn I took Bailey's collar off, because people comment on that.
So Miley.
So you get to bring your dog to work. This job gets better all the time.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually at home right now. So
it's just, you know what? The reason I thought you were at True North is because of the whiteboard behind you.
Oh yeah, well, I guess I'm a little, I guess I bring some of my work to home as well, especially nowadays.
Also because of the tie. So how long have you been plant-based? Did you become plant-based after becoming a staff physician at True North? And what everybody always wants to know is what you eat in a day.
Sure. So no, I actually had the fortune about 2 years before coming to True North. But again, I learned so much just by being immersed in this environment. I already read all the books. I have already done all the changes, but nothing like being in a place where all doctors or patients are in the same patient. We're actually seeing life and on all this cooking demos that are ongoing. And I learned so much when I got here. Had the fortune of not only learn about fasting, but learn about how you really eat this way. And so, great question you asked. What do I eat on a day with? So nowadays I am fortunate enough that I eat. I just eat a True North. So that's an easy question for me to. But I do want to take the opportunity to there, and I don't work at True North. I mean, I'm not there 7 days of the week, of course. And I also before I got to True North, I also ate this way, and I was very successful, I would say. So I think that the most important thing, the way I used to eat when I didn't have the fortune to eat here, was that I have a specific routine that of course, you have to learn to cook your own food. There's just no other way. There are no SOS-free places around, but you do have options and ways to go around. It just makes it that much more difficult. But I always make sure I have like the Dr. Bernard. He teaches the plate for food groups. So I made it simple and easy, and I will try to just find my favorite dishes and do them all over again. So you don't need to eat a different meal every time. And so I always cook my lentils, which I love. A cup of lentils for lunch and dinner, usually a cup or two. I personally love green drinks, green smoothies rather. It's important also, most folks should actually eat their salads, but in my case, I was so busy, especially I used to work in the ER. And so having the green smoothies, pretty much usually almost nothing, almost never fruit on a smoothie, just ate the fruit. That was kind of like my dessert, 2 or 3 fruits and a small amount of nuts. I would or not, not necessarily always, but just because that helps some of the fat soluble nutrients to be absorbed. But yeah, always making sure that I had my 4 main food groups, grains, legumes, greens, or salads, and nuts and seeds when those applied as well.
That's great. Well, if you could leave one message and one message only on a banner for the world, what would it be?
Well, great question. I frankly will think will be grateful and write it down. Why I say that is that, as bad as you've had it, we all probably, if you're watching this, probably have a computer in your connection or a phone, and you probably have it fairly good, probably much better than 99% of the rest of the world, or maybe 90%, whatever percentage it is. But in any case, as I was saying, I think the most important thing is that in general, we as human beings, we tend to always see the grass is greener on the other side. And so we just need to be grateful that the universe, God, or whatever made us gave us the opportunity to live. And also I said, be grateful and write it down, because again, you have to have the disciplines to to actually see it in a granular way how good you're doing, and that can go a long way, because then when you start with a good mentality, when you start with a mentality of you already have it all that you need, or you already are in abundance, makes it so much easier. Because if you're cynical, if then why bother? If you're not on a positive outset, a positive mentality, and chances are that you probably have hundreds of things in your life that you might be ignoring that you have. Is this classic saying that you don't appreciate what you have until you lose it. Well, let's not lose it before we're appreciating all we have. Again, I know this message is simplistic, but I see day in and day out that most folks just ignore all the good that they have, and we shouldn't. And I include myself there. I mean, I'm not perfect. I always go through stages in life as well, and and yeah, chances are you're probably doing much better than you think you are.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much, Dr. Soler. If you ever want to come back, I'm sure everyone would love to talk to you again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for all the things you do. I mean, I'm humbled to just be here, because you've certainly been one of the pioneers in this movement to bring more awareness, which is the main thing we need, because this literally saves lives, not only physical but mentally speaking. And are really grateful for all the work you do. And I see it day in and day out, patients coming here because you started them on this, and I'm so yeah, humble and grateful, and just keep doing your work. And yeah, hopefully we'll get together anytime soon if it's of value for you or the audience.
Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow it's going to be very early. I'm doing my 100th broadcast since sheltering began, and it's none other than Dr. Michael Greger. So please join us. It's very early, 8:15 a.m. Pacific time, but you won't want to miss it. Thanks again, Dr. Soler, and please say hi to all the wonderful doctors at True North for me.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. And hi to everyone. Bye to everyone. Thank you.
Bye.